Hello and welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Heart of the Cast. We have a very special episode, a World Champion Bonanza, as we have second place World Champ, ex-World Champ Joshua Schmidt going back-to-back finals from Master Duel. But the star of the
Hello.
show today, the TCG World Champ, Ruben. Go ahead and give us a little introduction, and congrats, of course.
Thank you. Hey everyone. I'm here with a little bit of a cat on the screen. So if you guys see me petting at the bottom, that's what I'm doing. Just good to be here. Big fan of the podcast, so really excited to be a part of it.
No, I'm very excited to have you. I mean, this is unprecedented. Two USA champions in a row. Um, it's very momentous, and I suppose maybe you can probably just start us at the beginning. It's September. Wait, when was the season ending last year? Like about August or something, 2023. What's the plan? Like, is your intention to do the grind? Because you got in through the point playoff, correct?
Yeah, I did get in through the points playoffs. The beginning of the season was a little interesting. 2022 was my first year really trying to travel to a lot of events, win as much as possible, and I got really close. I got my first second place during 2022. And then, so starting at the season for 2023, I was really excited to try and make it back to the finals and try and win one on my own. There was a 3v3 in Sao Paulo that me, Kamal, and Pac had agreed to play together in. And that was the first event of the season. So it was really exciting to have a 3v3 as the first event. Unfortunately, I know Europe doesn't get a lot of them, but us as Americans, we're big fans of them because it's really nice to have like your friends next to you. And something we say is like it's really hard for you to get variance out of a tournament when you have two other people that are playing very similar to your style next to you. So it's hard for all three of you to lose to chance, which I personally enjoy. And then we ended up doing really well at that event. Obviously, we won. And then that kind of gave me an extra spark. It was my first win. It meant a lot to me. Doing it with some of my best friends was really impactful. And then I went to two other events after that. I went to YCS Cancun. I did okay. I got top 16. And then I went to an American YCS. I didn't do too well. I started off undefeated and then lost three straight just because of mental fatigue. And then I had to take a couple months off just for work. So coming back into the game in January, I didn't know if I was going to do the Worlds race. I knew a lot of my friends were in contention for it because they had gotten a lot of points, whether it was from doing well at YCS's. Pack is a monster, and I think he got top four at like 4 or 5 different events just like at the start of the season. So it was already looking like really good for him. It was looking really good for Chris as well. So that like gave me extra motivation to like look into it. And then after we won Costa Rica already, I was in like such a good enough position. I was in like 20th place without even going to any regionals at that point that I
Yeah,
said it
real
would be a
quick. I was about
disservice.
to ask. So at this stage, after your like little mini break, like you were still in like a good point position, right?
I was in a decent one. So if it wasn't for winning Costa Rica, because that was another 48 points that we got. So between Sao Paulo, Cancun, and Costa Rica, I think it was like 140, 150 points. And between three events, that's a pretty solid start considering it's only half of the season.
Sorry, winning a
It's not
YCS only got you 48 points?
so because it's a 3v3 YCS, normally a YCS would award you 64 points for winning, 32 for making top cut, and then 32 for winning the event as first place being your placing. Since
64
a
still
3v3
feels
YCS,
really low, even for winning. Like that's not a lot, I
I
think.
mean,
How do you feel about the
like
point
it's
system?
I think it's interesting, and I think that's something that I can get more into to after this because I have like a pretty decent idea. I think that could help out the point system, and it's like a mixture between the Yu-Gi-Oh point system and the Pokemon one. But
Mhm.
the reason you get 48 is because there's 16 people in Top Cut, so you automatically get those 16 points when you win because that's your placing. And then since it's a Top Cut event, that's not a regional. They decided you get 32 points for just appearing in Top Cut. So depending on your placing, you get an additional 16 points.
They
Hmm.
used to
So
give
that gave
even
me
less points for YCSs in the very first season of when they started doing the points thing. I think it was 32 points for winning a YCS.
It was even less, yeah.
Yeah, they didn't even give you the bonus for just making Top
Yeah.
Cut. So they've definitely improved in the system they've had.
So this is a good spot
So
to
at that
talk about it, I suppose. Like, well, you said you have some ideas. Like, how would you like approach the point system? You think? I don't know anything about the Pokemon structure, but I mean, feel free to elaborate.
So what I've seen from the Pokemon structure is they have a set benchmark. At least that's how it was last year. I think it was 600 points for North American players that they have to accumulate through certain different events. They have the, I think, cups, challenges, and then their regionals, which are equivalent to our YCSs, where you're able to allocate points to. And your top 6 finishes at each of those events is how you allocate points. So it's not that someone can go to all the regionals all year and then just farm all the points, whether it's the biggest ones or not. It gets your top 6 regional finishes. So if you win 6 regionals, perfect. You get the top 6 points of those. But let's just say you only won 2 of them and the other ones you got like 5th, 8th, 7th. Like all those points will add up, but it'll still give you a stronger standing. So that way you can't get all your points from regionals. Then the same thing happens to YCS, is it takes your same top 6 events from those, gives you the points from it. So for someone that, let's just say, has had a great season and ends up in top 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times, it's not that they can just keep getting those points from YCSs. It caps out at a certain point. And then I think it shouldn't be that only 16 people for the US, or I think it was Europe as well, 16, it might have been 8, get into the tournament. I think it should be more of, there is this benchmark of points you should get into, and then that turns into a tournament in and of itself. Because that way it allows for more than 16 people to enter the tournament, even though there would only be 2 finalists. And I think it would also allow for North America to be able to do their tournament with Swiss rounds instead of single elimination, because I think that makes it a little more volatile and a lot higher up to variance when it comes to that. One of the biggest tournaments of players' years being up to variance, sometimes the die roll is really frustrating.
Well, it was really interesting because it was the exact same structure between NA and EU, except NA specifically was single elim, but EU playoff was Swiss.
Correct. And that's something we were really confused about, because we were wondering if we were going to get the same treatment as EU, if EU was going to get the same treatment as us, since ours was the week before. And there was just like confusion between the players in the playoffs. And I think that's just like very frustrating as a player base to not be fully sure what you're going into coming that weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I think like it was particularly heartbreaking for Pac because I mean, you have like a really good season, you do really well, you've put all this time in prep, and then you just one dogwood in game 3, and that's it. You're just out. Like you can't go again. Like there's no what's the word? Variance, but because you can't just take the 1x1 and then keep going. It's that was it. He was just out. So it sucks.
Yeah. And then like there's people that, what if you just brick one of the games in your first round? Like
Yeah.
it shouldn't happen. These decks are built insanely consistent, but it will. It's probability it'll eventually happen. You just hope it doesn't in those games. And like, what if I went first round 1 and I just drew my hand and said pass? I would have been like in a similar spot where it's like all this hard work for nothing. So
Yeah.
I think that system maybe makes it a little more forgiving, also gives more people a chance. Because something that I think is a little difficult during the season is keeping up with other players and seeing, oh, how many points they have, and trying to just make sure, oh, if they're going to a regional and they have roughly amount of the same points I have to go to a regional that weekend as well. So at least like even if they do well, I don't have to do better than them. It just means that I have to stay at the same spot. And like having to keep track of other players like that, I think is also like mentally straining. So I think it would benefit to have a benchmark, i.e., like Pokemon uses 600 points. I'd say based on how well Yu-Gi-Oh players did this year, like anywhere between 400 to 500 points in North America would be pretty solid. And then that turns into another tournament in and of itself, and it doesn't gatekeep as many people from trying.
You know what's funny is that I'm actually 99% sure that Pokemon got rid of it this year, like for next season. And I'm pretty sure the reason was that they needed to know they needed to have a better estimate of how many people would show up to Worlds. Um, because
Was it,
they like
how many do they
apparently
usually get? Is it a
well,
problem?
the Pokemon World Championship is a lot bigger than ours because
Yeah, yeah.
what Ruben's talking about is not like qualifying to a qualifier tournament, but qualifying for the actual World Championship. Right?
Oh,
They used to have a benchmark of like if you get 400 points,
yeah, yeah.
everyone who has 400 points can play Worlds. And so it was like I guess kind of like a number. They knew how many people got there, but they didn't know how many of those people would actually show up,
Hmm.
right? But like I feel like it'd be less of an issue for us because like I mean, does it really matter if like 50 people show up to the playoffs or 60 or whatever? Like does it really like it doesn't really inflate the number of like judges you would need or the number like the size of the venue, right? It's like never going to be dictated by the size of the playoff or something, right?
Do you have any
And
other?
like considering this year, like the regional stopped roughly about a month before nationals. So like there was a good amount of time where you could plan ahead and be like,
Yeah.
all right, we know X amount of players are going to make it into the playoffs. And proper planning can be done like that as long as there's like time in advance to be able to establish these things so there's no issue. I think it's just something that needs to be talked about. I think it's very hard to make drastic changes. So if we're going to see changes to the playoff point system, I think it's going to be slow and incremental ones, and the ones that work will be
I mean,
used
they
for the
have been
following
doing that,
years.
right? It's been changing from year to year just slightly. They haven't done like huge reversions, but they've been doing like a little bit every now and then. But I do agree. Like, oh, at least my biggest thing that I would like to be improved is just to, in general, just like make it a little less stressful to grind for these points. Simply because like I feel like you should expect the people that want to qualify to have some good results and to also play very actively throughout the season, but you shouldn't feel forced to like travel to other countries for a regional, right? I feel like that goes against like what a regional stands for. Like in Europe, it's like people are traveling to France for a regional because they need the points to get into the world's playoffs because the competition is so fierce and the French regionals are so big, right? I feel like, I mean, even the name regional suggests that it's like meant for the people within the region, and you're not supposed to travel to these like across multiple countries just to get some points, right?
Did you have any personal suggestions or fixes, Josh, for the point system? Because you're
Uh
obviously
yeah.
very deep in
I
the.
really like the idea of a best finish limit. What Ruben said, basically, like only a certain number of regionals count, right? That means like if I go to like let's say your best 10 regionals count. If I go to 10 regionals in Germany and I do well at those, I don't have the need to travel to other events. And other people also cannot travel to more and more and more and more events just to get more points.
Mhm.
And basically like if let's say I win a really big regional and get a lot of points from it, someone else can invalidate that by just traveling to 10 small regionals and doing well at those. Like they'll have the same amount of points. So on paper, it's basically the same result. Whereas like I feel like it's it shouldn't be like that, right?
I think we talked about this
I
before,
think
but
it.
go on, Ruben.
Sorry to cut you off.
No, that's
It's
fine.
something that also I feel like in the U.S. was kind of common this year, where there was certain players that would choose to go to regional events on weekends where we had YCSs because
Mhm.
a regional was worth the same amount of points.
Yeah.
And
That's
setting
crazy.
this up would incentivize players to go to the YCS instead, in my opinion, because I think a YCS should be the event that you should be trying to
Yeah.
go into the regionals, getting better at to do well at the YCS.
Yeah.
I think at any point, if you're disincentivized to go to a YCS or a regional, like there's a problem with the system, right? That it should never be a case where you would rather go
Yeah.
to a regional over a YCS as a competitive like player aiming for the highest accolades in the game.
It's never a good sign, right? It was the same exact thing when people started not entering the YCS main event because the side event had these crazy prizes with the like uncut sheets. It's the same thing. Like whenever you're incentivizing people to join a public event or a regional over a YCS, something's wrong, right?
I don't know. I'd rather play Speed Duel and get me that what was it? The super expensive. It was like a Flame Wingman giant card or something that went
Yeah.
for like 5 digits apparently, or some absurd thing like that.
Wow, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, there was they don't do them anymore. I think it was like Sheets or something. Speed Duel side events were absurd. They were just better than first place than a YCS. I'm pretty sure, right?
I've never gotten first place at a speed duel public event, so I don't know.
Well, clearly that's a skill issue. We
Clearly,
have
we do it for glory.
we haven't talked about this before. No, so I think we have talked about this before, but I think we had the suggestion as well. I don't know how you feel about this, but I think like we talked about maybe if you win a YCS in this season, do you think that should just like auto qualify you to the playoff?
I think so.
Do you have any thoughts, Ruben?
I wouldn't be opposed to it.
Yeah.
I think definitely because of how many players travel to different regions, there would have to be certain restrictions to them. I'm not sure which ones would be fair to make it balanced. Just because I remember initially during the points playoffs, there were some European players that came to the U.S. to play the
Who
bigger
would do
regionals.
that?
So like, yeah, I don't know who would do that, but
Yeah.
I think certain limitations like that um, would definitely like be in favor of a lot of players because I think it's more like that would help out a lot of players in South America or Central America that have less worlds like participation slots, so it gives more people a chance.
Yeah.
I think it should just be a YCS in your region qualifies you for that region's worlds qualifier, right? So like if a North American goes and wins a YCS in Latin America, it passes down to second place, like, or whoever is the first Latin American, like in that YCS.
Yeah,
Mm.
I agree with that. I would be happy with that.
But in general, like, it's not like you're not getting an immediate qualification to the World Championship. You're just getting a spot in the qualifier. And I think reserving, like, what would it be in Europe? Like, in a good year, it'd be four spots in the qualifier. In a bad year, it'd be freaking 2. Like, come on, like, that's like, it's not a big deal, right? To get those couple people into the qualifiers.
And most of the time, I feel like there's a good overlap with current YCS season winners and the people in the points playoffs.
Yeah. It just makes it like, it makes it less stressful for the people that are doing really well anyways. Because the people that are doing really well currently are just incentivized to having to travel to like a regional every weekend anyways, even if they're doing well in YCSs.
All
Yeah,
right.
like there was a point me and Gunther just like kept going back and forth talking like we don't know how many points we have. Like, are we flying to this regional? Like, all right, Gunther, I guess I'll see you in Vegas in 2 days. And then after that regional, it's like, all right, I'm paying $500 to go see you in Philly next weekend just because we don't know where we're at in points.
That's a whole nother thing, that like the communication on that stuff should also be a little better, right? Like the list should be updated more frequently and stuff like that. Like, I know it's probably a task that only benefits a couple of people, but it's like, I feel like you got to put in a little more effort into like making sure people know where they're at in this kind of system before they commit to, paying hundreds of bucks to travel to events and stuff.
Yeah, of
Okay.
course.
And there is a
Like, I feel like
there
it
is
shouldn't be that hard to just have like your points in Neuron or something.
yeah, that's the
And
thing, right? Like it's you'd think like you'd still just have that as a way to market. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in American YCSs, you guys still do like paper signups, right? And match slips?
yeah.
Almost. We do paper match slips. It's not necessarily paper signups. We have a website just like you guys do to where you get tickets for the YCS. We have to pre-register for the YCS, and our deck lists have to be turned in online
Okay,
before I
right.
think it's either 9 or 10 a.m. local time of the event.
Right, I
Mhm.
see.
But yeah, we don't use Neuron, which I think we should. I've used it once when I went to a YCS in Europe, and I think it was great, a lot easier than the website we use, a lot
Which
less
one did you
chance to
go
make a
to?
mistake. The one that Chris won, YCS, Lion, I think. I don't want to
Leon?
mispronounce
Yeah,
that.
last year.
Leon.
Leon, yeah,
Okay, cool.
yeah.
Is there was there any Masadu influence at all? Like, cause I know that Urena basically just went and did Masadu Worlds instead, despite. Well, wait, what was Urena's situation? He like didn't make playoff, but then they made the
No, he was in the playoffs for sure, I think.
yeah,
He was in
but
the
like,
playoffs.
but he didn't make it, so he
He
just went
wasn't
on a Masadu team.
exactly. There was a
Right.
couple duelists that qualified or like they made it into the playoffs, but also qualified through Master Duel, so they
Mm-hmm.
kind of had like second chances.
Yeah.
The awkward thing in this situation is basically that the Master Duel qualifiers, or like the most realistic one to qualify through, is obviously the regional qualifier at the very end of the season, right? Because all the other ones are just duelist cups where only the first place in the entire world gets in, right? And the one at the end of the season is the one where, like, a couple people from each region can go. So but you have to basically decide, like, am I going to grind for points because that takes the entire season, or am I just going to bank on making it in Master Duel, right?
Mm.
And then when the Master Duel regional qualifiers happen, it's the same situation, but the other way around, because the TCG playoffs haven't happened yet, right? Because the qualifier, I'm pretty sure this time around, was a couple weeks before the NAWCQ. So I'd imagine from like their perspective, it was like, well, do we just skip the qualifier because we're in the points playoffs? Well, no, we're still going to try to go for Master Duel just in case the other one doesn't work out, right? So you kind of like need to bet on like all of these horses to potentially get to World, right?
Yeah, so at any point did you guys like attempt the DC Cup as a backup, or did you even make a team like prior to the regionals?
So, like within my friend group, we had 3 people that were already trying to do the Master Duel grind. So we didn't feel like, say hi to Kat. We didn't feel like there was a need to have another team amongst us grinding. It was really just, I think, like 9 or 10 of us just helping out those 3 people get there. And unfortunately, they actually missed it by either 1 or 2 games. They were right there. They got 4th place. So it really came down to the end. It
Hmm.
was supposed to be Patrick Hoban, Gabe Molina, and John Wilkin. So like would have been a really strong team also
Mhm.
representing the US and Canada.
Yeah, just segueing a tiny bit into Massadul, Josh. The
Mhm.
the Massadul lineup was unbelievably stacked. And it says a lot as well that back-to-back final rematch, 3 of 4 top cut was the same teams. And like through like Swiss rounds or however you want to describe it, like were you playing like the same people from like last year, like almost every round?
Some of them, yeah. Not, I mean, there was obviously a lot of new faces. Even Task's team that got top 4 was basically only 1 out of 3 people were the same. It was just Task coming back. But yeah, it was definitely intense, and we knew going in that the competition was going to be crazy. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the reasoning was for almost the same people doing well this year that did last year. Maybe it's experience from last year that carried over to this year, like how to handle the pressure and all that kind of stuff. I don't know how much that affected other people's games. That's something that they would have to say.
What do you mean you don't know? You guys are insane. You guys are just insane master duelists. Like
I mean, we
it's
made
that simple.
mistakes. We made mistakes, and I'm sure we also got lucky at certain points. But I mean, overall, I can't say I'm not happy with how we played in our performance. Obviously, I am. But I just find it hard to believe that the other teams just like sucked, because I'm sure they didn't.
Can you give us a quick rundown real quick of Emery and the Swiss runs and tell us, give us a couple of shout outs to what was going on there?
Bro, I keep making the same reference, but you guys know that meme where it's the one guy sitting in front of his computer, like sweating like crazy and hammering on the keyboard, and then it cuts over to the other guy singing the payphone song.
Yep.
You know that?
Yep.
This
I'm aware.
is 100% me. I'm the sweaty guy on the keyboard playing the Fire King deck, losing my coin flips, watching my opponent's combo, trying to play into the board. And every time I look over at Emery, he's just like shifting someone, normal summoning Rubina. The one time he bricked, he opened shifter anyways and drew the Rubina next turn. It's like no problem. Like
it's fine.
that was just Emery. That was just Emery the entire day, ghost ogring the only play of the Yubel players with the Centurion deck and all that kind of stuff, like winning like, I don't know, 11 games in a row. Meanwhile, my coin flip rate, people calculated this, my coin flip rate throughout the event was 28%.
Oh, yikes.
Going first.
Wow.
Like
that is
and Quantal as well. We had a terrible day. You picture this, Quantal's first Maxi resolved in round 4. That's like game 11 or something.
Yeesh.
That was his first Maxi. You know what happened that game? He got FTK'd by Dark Strike Fighter.
First Maxi doesn't matter. We're playing
tier. So how did this deck work? I heard there was a Dark Strike Fighter FTK deck.
It's a super heavy samurai deck. And apparently I couldn't tell you the names of the cards, but there's a Mecha Phantom Beast cards because they all got a thing with like tokens and manipulating levels. There's like a Mecha Phantom Beast that you summon with Aurora Dawn that like searches some spell card that pumps one of your guys' levels to like 43, and then you distribute that for Dark Strike Fighter, which is like the levels times 200.
Oh, wow. So much fun. I guess that's like for branded or for like the board breaker decks. And you
exactly. So that was the logic, was that he would queue into the people who weren't playing hand traps and you would just FTK them, which also kind of begs the question. I mean, you still need to win the coin flip, so I don't know.
Well, they did win the coin flip. That was step 1, I suppose.
Okay, now to be fair, in the final, you guys had like a triple like coin flip victory, and then a triple coin flip for set 2, I think, right?
Oh, in top 4?
Was it top 4 or was it the finals?
It was top 4. It was against Task. Against Task, we went first the first 6.
That was disgusting. You guys went 6-0 in coin flips. Yeah. I almost felt bad for their team.
We went 0-3 in the third set.
Yeah, it was weird. It was like 3-3 and then 0. Yeah, I mean, shout outs to them. They put up a good fight for losing 6 out of 9 coin flips.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They even went up 2-1 even after losing. I mean, I bricked going first, and Emre I think also bricked game 1. I don't remember, but yeah, they did very well.
Before we move back to TCG, I just wanted to ask really quick as well. How did you feel about the deck list leak? Was there? So for context for anyone listening, so basically what happened was, there is, so it's really cool in some way because you can log into Mastodon and you can watch worlds like in game, like you can spectate the duels like from your client. Like that's legitimately a really cool thing. But naturally, what happens there is people, like everyone has a spreadsheet guy in the background, going through all of the games, spectating and listing all of the cards that they see visibly. Now, what happened was there's this software called untap.gg, which for anyone who plays Hearthstone, and I think Magic as well, might be familiar. It's like this little secondary software. It's not illegal, but it just tracks everything, and it shows you cards that have been used. It shows you the deck list as it starts to slowly build together. Now, what was really weird about this was for some reason, untap.gg software was able to scrape the entire deck list, not just cards revealed. Because it's one thing to record everything that your opponent's doing and say, okay, they've activated a nib, they've milled an Ash, they've milled a Callbot, and then you take notes of the full deck list like that. Yeah. The difference this time was that Untap software had this bug or this glitch that was able to record the entire deck card for card. So, Macedo Meta used this software, scraped everyone's deck list that was revealed game 1, uploaded the deck list immediately, round 2 of the tournament. So that's the context. How do you feel about that?
I didn't feel very good about it. Well, here's the thing. The problem with this entire situation, I don't have a problem with open deck lists in general, but I think such a thing would have to have been communicated before the tournament happened. And I can give you some examples of why that. For example, I felt like we had a disadvantage because of that situation. And I'll tell you why. So there was a few things. First of all, my secondary deck was a complete hard counter to Yubel, right? It was a labyrinth deck that was completely custom made just to beat Yubel, nothing else. I was not going to queue it into any other decks. That deck had Unending Nightmares. It had Heavy Storm Duster to pop like the openings and the Nightmare Pain to take away their win condition by just ramming into your stuff, and it had Black Horn
as
of
well.
Heaven and
Yeah.
Solemn Strike to deal with like SP Little Knight and Access Code Talker and Chaos Angel, which are the only plays that threaten you if you kill the Nightmare Pain, right? So like that deck basically couldn't lose to Yubel. The problem is if your opponent knows your full deck list and they have a Yubel deck, they're just not going to queue the Yubel deck. So once the deck list got out there, I just basically throughout the entirety of day 1, I was not able to play that deck again. I just didn't play it again, because all of my Yubel opponents knew that I had it. I queued it one more time in top 4 because I felt like basically even then it was still a gamble, because my top 4 opponent in Task's team had Yubel and their own Labyrinth deck. But it was just a matter of, I felt like their Labyrinth deck was so bad into my Snake Eye deck that they couldn't risk it. So I made the call of, hey, they're not going to queue it. They're not going to be like brave enough to queue it in case I bring the fire deck, because it was just too bad into it. Like it didn't have hand traps. It had like other like weird. I don't remember. I don't know the exact list, but it was not good into fire. So I was like, okay, against that guy, I'm gonna play the lab deck. But like that was weird. And the other weird thing is
He did queue Yubel in the end, right?
They did queue Yubel. Yeah.
I remember watching it at the event, and it was like coughing baby hydrogen bomb. Like it was just like it was so unfair.
I was the painful guy in that matchup.
Yeah.
It was great. No, and the other thing was the other decision we made during deck building was to not play Gamma everywhere, which actually had an idea behind it. Like first of all, I thought like the only deck that really wanted Gamma was the fire deck, but I really wanted to keep my fire deck 40, and I didn't want another brick in it because it already plays a bunch. And then we considered putting it into other decks, but I said, hey, what if we just don't put it anywhere so that none of our opponents know where it is, right? Because if we never reveal it, then they always have to like, there's always this chance in their head that like, hey, it might just be in the fire deck and they just haven't drawn it yet, right? And so I was like, okay, well, let's just not play Gamma anywhere so they don't know where it is. Turns out after round 1, they knew exactly where it was. It was nowhere. So like they never had to play around it anymore, and that was kind of weird. So I think like whatever reasons they stated for doing it, I felt like I felt like they were not really being honest. I felt like the reason was clearly to just drive traffic to the website, because you did not create a fair and equal competition for everybody, because some people played more with this kind of hidden deck thing in mind, and some people played with it less, right? Had this been announced beforehand that the lists were public, I'd be fine with it. I would have built my decks differently. But once people have like submitted their decks and maybe thought that they could have gotten an edge in the first couple of rounds by their deck lists were hidden, you just ruined that for those people. So
yeah, so the logic, which in all fairness makes a little bit of sense. Let's break it down. So hey, you guys have a spreadsheet guy in the background who is recording every single spectate, all of those games, feeding it to the players, and telling you, hey, this is all in your opponent's deck list. Now, that is true, but everyone is doing that. This is not unique. Every single team at Master Duel Worlds who cares about doing well will have someone in the game client tracking that down. So I think trying to portray it as a service to the community is not really true, especially when you consider the fact that, yeah, while cards do get revealed and then eventually the information becomes public and then public deck list is a legitimate argument that you could have that some people have suggested for Top Cut, for example, or deeper into the tournament. But after round one and then scraping cards that weren't even revealed is crazy. Yeah. I got one really specific example from one of the players who said, you know, he looked at his opponent's deck list before the game and saw that they were only on 2 copies of Droll, not 3. So his opponent goes Pearly Effect, Excavate, hits 2 Droll. Well, he doesn't have to worry about the third one anymore because he knows the exact ratios, which you can't do if you're just recording every single card. Because you don't know the ratios unless the full deck is revealed off of, like, you know, a tier deck milling, like, you know, literally 60 or something. So there's really niche interactions like that I think make it unreasonable. And as you said, you know, clearly journalism, information, business, people are going to want to see the deck lists. You're driving more people towards your website, ad revenue, traffic. Let's be real. You know, there's a very, very positive incentive to put all the deck lists up and put all the deck lists up early. So that's essentially, I guess, our thoughts on that. And one really funny example, shoutouts to Fetty, he said his team's deck list was like the first one. So, you know, you click on the link for Master Duel deck list, you scroll down, and his exact line was like, bro, if these people have bad Wi-Fi, they still get our deck list first, because it was literally deck 1. It was insane. So that was, yeah, it's very unlucky that I don't know how they chose who should go first, but Fetty's team was first, and he was really upset that his was very specific. Deck 1 was like his list. Yeah. So anyway, yep, that's where we're at with the Master Duel World situation. Ruben, let's go back to TCG. So you know, you go. Tell us a little bit about the qualifier. What was the game plan and deck building for that?
So, to be honest with you, I spent probably the least amount of time getting ready for the qualifier from the other 15 people, just because I had a lot of work leading up. Once regionals finished, I kind of had to like switch my mindset. My boss is very generous, and I'm very open about what I'm doing with Yu-Gi-Oh with him. So I told him I was grinding and that I needed a little bit of time on the weekends to just like travel and get this done. And once the regionals ended, I'd be able to fully focus on work again up until nationals, and then same thing, go back to work up until worlds, which is what I ended up doing. But
what do you do?
I had Kamal, and
sounds really interesting.
I'm a circus performer. I jump rope.
Whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Didn't you see his performance?
Go on.
Nadir, didn't you see his rope?
Oh yeah, I did. Yeah, I was about to ask about that. Yeah, you did the jump rope on the on stream. That's insane.
Yeah, so like that's what I do. That's why I'm in Florida right now. I had 3 shows in Disney last night. So
let's go.
That was a lot of fun. But yeah, so during that time, I was really focused on work. We were filming this project that I unfortunately can't speak too much about right now, but hopefully when it's out, should be really cool.
Wait, do you perform in like films and stuff?
Not yet. That could be fun. We've been pitched for commercials. Things haven't fully gone through, but I mostly do like circus style shows. Like this holiday season, I'm going for my 3rd year on a holiday tour throughout the US, which is going to be a lot of fun.
Nice. Do you like Performapal?
Performapal is cool. I played the deck a little bit. Unfortunately, when I started taking the game seriously, the deck was already hit to oblivion. I guess that's fortunate, depending. I wasn't around, so I don't know how bad it was.
He answered your question so seriously. Dude, why did you do that to him?
It's the circus deck, you know? Like, it's what it's about. No, that's so cool. That's really random. Like, that's definitely the most eccentric job I've ever heard from like a top player. For sure. Usually it's like, yeah, I'm a data analyst. Like,
no, that's the first time I've ever heard anyone say that that's their job. It's very interesting.
I'm an insurance. I do quality control for a finance company. That's usually 90% of jobs. Anyway, yeah. So prep for the point playoff.
Yeah, so it was I had days where I was waking up at like 6:30 in the morning. I wouldn't get back to the house I was staying at till like 11 p.m. So I really had Charlie and Kamal like testing all day for me. Anytime I had like 5-10 minutes, I'd hop in Discord, watch a match, give like my 2 cents on it. They'd give me their opinions and I'd go back to work and just think about that all day. And I'd just be like constantly working, thinking about Snake Eye and Fiendsmith combos, like what's the best thing you can do with this? And like I talked about it on stream after I won, and it's just like you have to treat Yu-Gi-Oh like a job. You have to clock in on the days where you want to do it the least. Like those are the most important times where you have to like really try. And it was the days where I'd get home at 11 p.m. and I'm like, I'm really tired, and I'm like, all right, well, I need to put an extra 2 hours in tonight because I'm really tired, and that means I need to put in the work tonight. So it was a lot of those nights where I was getting like roughly 4 to 6 hours of sleep between work and testing, getting ready for the event, and then it made it so like once I sat down and they said you may begin, like all the nerves were gone. Like I felt that I had did everything in my power to prepare for the event, and then what happens happens. Like if I do well and make it to Worlds, I do. If not, like that was part of the journey. Like it was part of chance, and I did everything I could to prepare, and I was happy with it. So well, once I like got to nationals, it was very much like a moment of relief. Like we made it here, and then the chips will fall where they do.
I feel like
And
deck
I'm very
building
happy
has
where they did.
Yeah, for sure. Here you are now. And I was just gonna ask about like the deck building, the tech choices and stuff. I mean, I feel like there wasn't too much room for innovation that season, right?
The only thing I feel like we did like pseudo different, which a lot of people in the playoffs ended up doing, is siding extra deck cards. It's something I've been a really big fan of for a while now. I learned that from my friend Pat. It's just like being able to access a card in your extra deck instead of trying to rely on drawing a card from your side deck and your main deck, I think is a little more consistent and reliable for a game plan for games 2 or 3. So I'd rather have an extra deck card in my side deck that I could be like, hey, I need this access code for when I go second, but this other card's better for when I go first. And then that way, game one, if my deck is, for example, I played Yubel at Worlds, my deck was so good going first. I didn't need all the extra end pieces. I wanted to make it more flexible for when I went second. So I got to play all those additional cards throughout my extra deck and using my side deck for the same thing. And that's something we did with Snake Eye with siding Dark, siding access code, and then siding M7 for when we went first. So it makes it more of a toolbox deck instead of it being like, oh, I have to rely on drawing my hand traps. You could also abuse the fact that you understand the mechanics of the deck and can break a board using the cards you have in your hand.
I feel like I remember Patrick specifically citing, was it Zelantis and Phoenix for going second? Did you do that as well?
I didn't. That's where we sided the dark and the access code. That's something we kind of have difference of opinions on. I think access code's one of the best extra deck monsters. It's just dad from the extra deck. So the card's just like really strong. Being able to like out cards such as skill drain, I think is like really important. It being able to swing over towers monsters, I think is really relevant. There was like early days versus Tempai where they didn't know how to beat a 6400 attack or 6300 attack access code that was made with an IP. So that was like pseudo game plans that I had after like I got shifted or like weird grind games. I'm like, all right, stick a 6300 access code on the field. Your Trident Dragon gets to 6,000. What can you do? And like
Okay,
they can't pop it, so
I gotta call you out on that reference. You said an extra deck Dark Arm Dragon. Didn't you start playing in like 22 or something?
I started playing competitively in 2016, right after
Oh,
Eric
okay.
Christensen got second. I'm a student of the game, so I've watched almost every feature match that's ever been out. I've read almost every feature match that's ever been out. That's including the non Konami official events, the non Upper Deck gaming events. I really love the game, so I think the best way to get good at it is to learn from the past and see what they've done before and kind of like um, improve upon that. It's helped me a lot. So I really understand a lot of the past formats, especially a lot of the more known ones. I've either played them or watched them been played, so I can understand that Yu-Gi-Oh and take something from it.
Yeah, so I was just gonna
Nice.
say that's like a really super old head reference, but that's fair enough.
It is.
What
I was
is
surprised by that too.
what is
I
your
gotta admit.
favorite format? What is or I mean, I assume you've maybe dabbled in a few of them. What have you enjoyed most? Probably the one that you won worlds in, maybe, but you know.
Honestly, the Worlds format was not a fun one. I think a lot of people could
Oh,
attest to
okay.
that. There's a lot of formats that I think aren't necessarily like fun. There's some that I think like are fun as well, but like varying degrees. Like I've heard Josh talk about this, how like a tier mirror can be really fun, but it's not something you want to play a long tournament for. And I can agree with that. Where it's like I can sit down and probably play like 2-3 hours of tier mirrors with someone. I don't want to go sign up and play a tournament with tier mirrors because then there's going to be those 1 to 5 people that are going to like want to just strap on their helmet and play 3D Shifter in their deck and then summon a Rise Heart or like summon Empin, and then it's just not going to be as fun when it's like tryharding and you're actually dealing with like the floodgates of the format. Where I think like a solo just 1v1 card for card mirror I think can be really fun. I've had a lot of fun playing like Tengu plants at locals. We used to play Dad mirrors as well, Lightsworn mirrors like from back in the day. I think like same exact card goat format mirrors are fun. I think once you start playing on like the text goat format, it's no longer fun. It gets very sacky, and it's more of like you get to points where you're just like decking your opponent out because of like which deck choices they make for going for consistency instead of more power spells, which I think can be like a little weird. So I'm not too big of a fan of that. I haven't dabbled too much in Edison. It seems like an interesting format for sure.
I
Zoo
think it's
format
like
was always like
go on.
fun for me. Zoo format was like fun for me because
Ooh,
that's when I
okay.
like started getting good. But
Mm.
it's like certain parts of Zoo format, like YCS Seattle is like a good pivot point, and then like after that it gets kind of weird because Black Sheep becomes popular, and then like Norden becomes really good. So it's like the draw combos, which I don't think are too healthy, and then we have like the Draco Zoo version with like all the draw combos, which I think are also unhealthy, and then Terror Top finally gets hit. So like by nationals, I think you get like a very healthy version of Zoo.
That's really funny that you mentioned Tengu, because I feel like that's one of the most underrated Time Wizard formats. I freaking love Tengu mirrors. Like
It's
it's one of
starting
my
to get
favorite
there. I
historical
feel
ones.
like more and more people are like. I feel like the impact that Edison has had is that people are more willing to, in general, look back into Time Wizard formats, and they're trying out different things. You know, like I see more and more people trying out like Tengu Plant or Hat format and all those kind of things. I think it's only a matter of time until like every format gets tried, and if it's good enough, then it'll maybe stay.
Yeah. All right. So going into Worlds prep time, I suppose. I guess you could give us a little rundown of like the format, how you felt about it, and I mean just how you ended up settling on Yubel of all decks.
So the story's funny. We'll get there, but initially it was a little bit stressful not knowing if we were going to have Moon League or not, and if the TCG ban list was going to impact the World's format ban list. Because once we had qualified, we weren't fully sure because Konami still hadn't given us the late August date for the ban list, so things were still in the air. And when we got that confirmation, I think it was like a week and a half after Euros. So at that point, they told us Moon was going to be legal. They told us Phantom of Yubel was going to be legal, which were two big things because those cards weren't legal in Korea yet. So
Yeah.
the Korean representative, he played a completely different format. Like their format was pure of like Fire King, Snake Eye, like Rescue a Snake Eye, and like Voiceless Voice, which like every other OCG region like had no Voiceless Voice and like barely any Rescue Ace, like besides Japan. So it was very interesting to like see him also switch to Yubel once like the cards were legal. But we saw those and realized, okay, Snake Eye's probably going to be like the strongest deck. And then they emailed us again saying, all right, this is your official ban list. The TCG ban list won't take effect. And at that point, we were like, all right, the only like winning decks in our opinion were Snake Eye or Yubel. We figured Tempai was going to be possibly popular because it only got hit by the field spell, and it's a deck that if you're not comfortable with anything else, you could probably get on Tempai and make it to top cut. I don't think it's a winning strategy. I feel like a lot of people can agree with that. Just once you make it a top cut, I feel like it's a lot harder to win with that strategy. Um, we felt like there would have been at least two Ritual Beasts because of the European representative, and then there was a South American representative that also, or South or Central American representative that also qualified with Ritual Beast. And that's something we did. We went through the whole list and saw all the decks people qualified with, and made assumptions as to what decks we thought they would be bringing, and that way we had our own little chart where it was, I think we had 16 predicted Snake Eye, we had like 6 or 7 predicted Jubel, and then it was like one branded, 2 Tempai, one Rescue Ace, one Voiceless Voice, and then maybe like another deck, like a Fire King deck. And then we had like about 26 of the 28 decks like right there, and we're like, all right, if we're saying Snake Eye's the best deck, we have to beat Snake Eye. And like my whole testing group, which was me, Jose, and Landon, had always been playing Snake Eye the whole format. So we were like, let's build our deck to just beat the mirror. And we started with Chummy in the main deck. Chummy like became really weird when you go first and you get stopped and you have it in your hand and you're like, well, I have Chummy and like Ash, but Ash by itself doesn't prevent me from like getting OTK'd, and then the Chummy's not going to do anything. So we quickly realized that that card needed to be a different hand trap, but there was no other hand trap that like actually was good enough to be in that slot. So we settled on Phantasme, where it's a card that applies pressure, it protects your plays, and then lets you filter your hand to get into the better hand traps. And that card ended up like completely changing the way we tested because that card started providing so much impact since we have like Moon on the like legal. You're able to like drop Phantasmates, 2 bodies to make a Moon initially. It protects you from like SP. It swings over Appaloosa. Like it forces a Flambirds. Like if you have that plus like Witch, you get so much advantage on your opponent's turn. If you have like Phantasmate plus Abystial starting your turn with like 2 bodies on the field that are huge is also like insane amount of pressure without being able to do anything. So that's something we started realizing. And then at this point, we were testing a lot with Hani, him being just like the other decks that we were playing against. And it was going very unfavorable versus Yubel whenever they went first. And it was like slowly and slowly becoming more unwinnable the better Hani got with the deck. And I started realizing this, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to start testing one-on-one with Hani versus the Yubel deck. And I think there was one night where he got like 10 matches in a row off of me, like probably 2 weeks before Worlds. And I'm like, okay, I'm a little frustrated with this. We're going to go over the replays, see if I could have done anything better. Could have done nothing better. And I'm like, all right, going to sleep on this. Still thinking Snake Eyes like the best deck, trying to figure it out. We're like, should we play Droll? Should we play Dark Ruler? Like, we even thought about Cherries for Phantom. We're like, if we just hit Phantom, maybe like their hands just become like dead, and then Cherries can like sometimes hit Moon or like Requiem or Sequence, like trying to figure out different ways to like make certain hand traps good. And it was a dark, so it allows us to like use the Dark Charmer better, and at least gave us like a search target if they like Princess popped it. So it kind of makes your deck a little more fluid. It was like very interesting. Like thought process, and we're like, okay, this isn't good. We also tried DD Crow, and like that also felt like really bad because it didn't give you the body. And we finally got to our in-person testing 4 days before Worlds, and as I walk in from the airport, Hani is just laughing at Jose. Like he is. I felt so bad, but he is just laughing at him, going, "I can put my hand back. This hand's too good. I'll try again." And he'll like draw a new hand of the U-Ball deck and be like, "No, this is too good. I'll give you another try." And puts his hand down and draws a hand with like 3 bricks and goes, "All right, you can try and win this game." And gets like 3 hand traps, and then Jose like concedes again and goes, "No, I don't want to do this anymore." And at that point, I realized the U-Ball deck was just like the strongest one, and I'm like, out loud, I'm like, if we keep losing this bad to it with Snake Eye, maybe something's wrong, and clearly Yubel's the best deck. And everyone goes, nah, it's too late to switch. The deck lists are due in 5 days. And I'm like, I guess it's too late for you guys. Hani, give me the Yubel deck. And I stayed up for like 40 hours straight playing versus Landon, playing versus Chris, playing versus Jose, playing versus Hani. And it was just like, all right, learning the deck as much as possible. And it really worked out. I talked to a lot of people about it. A good friend of ours, Ben, was testing with us there as well, and he's been playing the deck on Macedon in person for a really long time. I reached out to Lexi. She's been playing the deck out for a really long time as well. I watched a lot of like YouTube. There's this guy, I think he's from Central America, that's been doing really good with the Yubel deck as well. And it wasn't like by myself that I got to learn it. I had help from like a lot of people, especially considering how like late I switched to it to be able to do well with the deck. And it was like a lot of different resources that I had to like pull together to be able to like feel confident to do well with the deck. But it just felt like it was the best deck, and it had like 3 Wanted, 3 Bonfire, 3 Snake Eye Ash, 3 Engraver, and the Snake Eye deck just didn't.
I really curious about like going second. I mean, surely it was struggling when it didn't win the dice roll, right? Was it always just that good, like pushing into hand traps and the board?
So the thing is, and something you realize the more you play the Yubel deck, you don't necessarily have to break a board. You just have to force interactions, and there's a lot of interactions that aren't necessarily favorable for your opponent versus you. So like when you go like Gates, summon Dark Beckoning Beast, you're already at a +1. If the Appaloosa negate the Dark Beckoning Beast, and you have like Lotus or another thing you can normal summon, the Appaloosa kind of didn't do anything. And then now you can make a Link 2 that can possibly threaten the Appaloosa while also giving you an extender with Gates, and you've done all of that with like essentially 1.5 cards, right? And then Princess isn't normally a good disruption that trades into the board as well. And that's not considering that you were able to put a Phantom on the field at any point during the game, especially if you have Nightmare Throne. It allows you to have another layer of protection, either playing through Nib or playing through cards like Princess, because they allow you to get to your Spirit of Yubel in unique ways. On top of that, we built the deck with 20 defensive cards, so when you do go second, the odds of drawing 2 to 3 of them are really high, even if you were to draw the Bestials or Phantasme for turn, or Imperm, because those are cards that we figured would be live versus most of the better decks in the format, as everyone's either ending on Solar Rage or ending on IP. So those cards being able to be used on your opponent's turn and your own turn, I feel like gave them a lot of value to be able to break a board. where I did do that a lot during a tournament where like I drew a Phantasme for turn, they played, and I'm like, all right, channeling 3 Phantasme, draw a new hand. Oh, I just drew Nightmare Throne and an Extender out my hand. This is crazy. Drop the Extender, force a card, Phantasme protects it, use Nightmare Throne. I'm able to get an additional body, make Phantom of Yubel now, and then you're able to put game on the field. Just because of Nightmare Pain allowing you to redirect the damage. Like not having to clear their field to win the game was really important.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's like the most impressive to me that it sounds like it was a real like group effort, you know, like I don't know if you also did this for Worlds, but the fact that like at least Nationals, when you were describing like you would go to work, people would just play for you and then give you the fucking meeting notes for you know the minutes for the meeting on the testing session. That's really crazy, and I think I guess that goes to the true spirit of Team USA. Like it was a group effort, you know, and you had that very insane shout out. It was not for me, Bell. It's for you, Bell. That was heartwarming.
Yeah, it's true. Just like you said, it is a group effort, and I think it's something that's like consistent with the friends that I play with a lot. A lot of the times that we have individual success, it's not because of us as individuals; it's because of the group as a whole. And I feel like a lot of times our individual victories are more of a testament to like how well we work as a group than like how good we are individually. I think the past season shows that as well, just like how much success a lot of people from my testing circle have had. And I feel like we'll have in the coming future just because we're all so dedicated and driven. And like Josh is like a big motivational force for like Chris, which is a big motivational force for me. So like it all kind of like loops around where like all the good players are constantly motivating each other to like do better and get better, which constantly is going to be motivating the other people beneath them to do better and get better. And that's why I think like overall the Yu-Gi-Oh community keeps improving as a whole every year, which is really exciting.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's just a good positive feedback loop. So that sounds really good. In terms of your worlds deck, so you know it was very much Snake Eye, Snake Eye, Snake Eye, and then suddenly you get this tear for Yubel, and yeah, it's just very clearly the best deck. But you did mention some, I guess, rogue choices that other people were playing and stuff, and you talked a little bit about the negatives of Tenpai. Was there anything else that was like remotely playable or even just close to being like a choice other than Snake Eye Yubel?
So like there was a good like 5 minutes where I personally thought I could put together like Fiendsmith Melodious like Snake Eye or something like that. Just
Just
because
five
I
minutes.
really enjoy Asanado. Maybe 10. Like But like Asanado, I think is like a really, really ridiculous card, and I think
Yeah.
like Reframe's a really good card as well. And just like the ability for them to access the Snake Eye cards without having to use the Snake Eye cards, I really enjoyed, especially with like the limitations the deck had already. I could have built a lot of the fundamentals I had initially used when I built the deck the first time, and I think it kind of would have worked better because Konami made some consistency choices for you, so I didn't have to make them myself on which cards I could sacrifice in my main deck. But once we realized Moon was legal, it was like, I guess it doesn't matter. We don't have to play these extra cards in the extra deck. Like the Fiendsmith cards just do everything anyway.
Yeah. I was curious if you maybe checked back because you said you made a list of a prediction of what every individual like player would play. Did you check back and saw how accurate it was?
I haven't gone back individually, but throughout the tournament, we had another list of, I guess, similar to what you guys were talking about, Master Duel. Our friend group, we were just like, all right, I played against this person and
Yeah.
they were playing this deck. All right. So by the end of the tournament, we had the whole list of like all the players and like a good idea of like the decks they were playing and their card choices. And I think we were probably off by like maybe 5 people roughly.
That's not
Like
bad.
there was the Korean guy we got wrong for sure. We felt that he was gonna stick to Voiceless Voice just as a comfort pick. He ended up going to Yubel.
How did he perform in
Who
the
else?
end?
Um
Because I think
I
it's
don't
such
remember.
a like, what's the
I
word?
think he got 11th. I
That
think he got
that's
11th.
that's kind of like decent when you consider the fact that Korea just was not playing with these cards, and then suddenly they're legal for
Oh, of
Worlds.
course. This was the first format or the first event that Korean duelists were allowed to use Moon and Phantom. So I think it's like it gives a lot of credit to them
Oops,
and like him specifically. He was, I think,
sorry about that,
X1
chat.
going into like round 5. I'm not 100% sure. Um, then who else? Most of the Snake Eye ones we got right. I think I missed on 2 European players, that qualified with Snake Eye. I thought they were going to keep playing Snake Eye, but they went over to Yubel. They, I don't think, did that well, but they also told me that they believe that they should have played more consistency cards in their deck, and they passed turn a lot, which is something that like I had realized initially, and that's why we increased the like deck count to not draw the bricks, and we just put in more starters into the deck and more hand traps. More like this should even out the ratio. Yeah, and then there was one Rescue Ace player. I'm not sure who it was, but I did see a Turbulence on the field at some point.
I mean, there was also a Fire King in top 8, but I guess that was something you could have reasonably expected.
Yeah, I played against Yuto and Swiss as well. I made a pretty big misplay versus him that I thought was going to cost me a top cut.
Yeah,
Oh,
speaking of your
you
Swiss
ended up
rounds,
you ended up getting in on X3, right?
Yeah, I got really lucky. I had really good breakers because I had played Mark during Swiss and he beat me, and then I played Julio during Swiss and he beat me, and then I beat Jose and he was in top cut, and then Yuto beat me and he was so 4 of my 7 opponents being in top cut, I think really helped.
Yeah.
yeah, I think only like one X3 makes it, right?
We were 2. I got 7th, and then Giancarlo also on Yubel got 8th place at X3. He had the same breakers, just I think he beat someone different and lost to someone different. But amongst those 4 people, we played the same ones.
Yeah, Europe got a little bit washed on TCG. I think Anthony was. Did we have any EU in top cut of TCG?
Anthony was 9th.
Yeah, he got 9th, like,
got
which
9th.
was really unfortunate. But no one else in top cut, right?
Well, Julio got top 8.
Yeah.
Julio got top 8. Yeah.
Shout out to Ritual Beast. Oh my god, like, it was really sad though, because like he was just absolutely like popping off, and then he gets the feature match, and then his opponent just sits with Nibiru in his hand the entire turn, waits for Flame Banshee, gets nibbed. Okay, next game, same thing happens. Gets nibbed. Like it was like the one card his deck can't beat. It was really sad.
Well, it's funny because I know his deck can play through Nib at certain points, and like the same thing happened to me because I think I played him the round before, and he opened like. You can consider this insane or not insane, depending how you look at it. Game 1, I win the die roll, and he goes, draw Phase Shifter. So I just go Phantom set 2 pass, and then he goes, all right, Lightning Storm. And I'm like, there go my imperms, and then he goes, all right, Dark Ruler on Phantom, and I'm like, okay, but keep in mind he only has 3 cards left, right? So it's like it's scary, but it's not scary. And then he goes, all right, E-Tally, and I'm like, oh my god, this is gonna get really bad. He goes normal summon flag, and I'm like, okay, interesting. Then he just banishes the shifter from the graveyard, the flag, and the Lara to hard summon Protos as his last card, and just goes, all right, summon a Ritual Beast Winda, call Dark, go. And I'm like, well, wasn't what I was expecting, but now we're in a weird grind game. So like I ended up pulling that game out.
Yeah,
And
you
then
told me
game
about that during the video where you with Yubel, because like the advantage of like I guess like fire cards is that Protoss can't keep calling fire, but Protoss can keep calling a dark every turn against Yubel, but you still somehow won that.
Well, like I had Fiendsmith in my hand, so that's the card that allowed me to get back into the game because
Yeah.
I was able to send his Winda so it wouldn't trigger, and then I drew Valor for turn, so I had Valor for the Protoss on the following turn. So I was just hoping he didn't top deck a Kanahawk to 1-card combo me. And then I was able to come back the next turn. Then game 2, he shifted me, and then I had no hand traps to stop Protoss. And then it was fine. And then game 3, my hand's really poor, and he shifters me again. And then all I have is like Nibiru as a defensive card. And he does his 1-card combo, and I was like, all right, I have to hold this nib for the end because if he has an extender, he's just gonna like kill me through the nib. So like I hold the nib for the end, and he's just like, all right, I'm gonna play through it anyway. And then he gets nibbed on stream and doesn't play through it. I'm like, so you draw shifter and play through the nib versus me, but not versus Tempai. It's like, But I'm just glad he made it in as well. I was really happy to meet him. A super kind duelist. We had a great match, even though I got shifted 3 times, which I think speaks volumes to the person he is.
Oh yeah, if you're speaking nice about someone after getting shifted 3 times, that means a lot. Yeah, you got to do some work to pull that one back.
Yeah, for sure.
So you mentioned Jose was part of your testing, right?
Yeah.
So how come he just ended up on Snake Eye?
So, like I said, when I switched last minute, it was more of a thing of they didn't think it was a good idea for me to switch so soon to the event. But it's like I'm very comfortable in my ability and to learn quickly. and to be able to kind of like know life a deck, whether it be like I need to be up all these hours, like I said, I was up for 40 hours to like learn a deck, or like watch infinite videos on it to like learn it, or just like sit there in solitaire combos. I'll do it because to me that's like what it takes to win, and that's what I want to do. So it's like once I realized that Snake Eye possibly wasn't the best choice, I said if I'm gonna make a choice to switch now, it has to be now. I'm very comfortable playing Snake Eye, so worst case scenario, these are 3.5 days I wasted not playing Snake Eye, but then my testing partners are playing it and testing it for me. So it's not like I'm like losing time fixing the deck. It's just like I won't have as many reps. But I've played Snake Eye since January, so how different could it be? And I felt that it was worth taking the risk and just being like, all right, I'm going to try and play Yubel. I think it's the best deck. I think it plays through everything. And clearly, like it worked out. And it's not something that I like recommend to everyone, but I do recommend like testing all your options, even if you feel like your comfort pick or something that like you were so sold on. Because I kept telling people I was going to play Snake Eye for so long, and like I didn't expect to switch last minute, and a lot of people were so confused. Like I didn't tell anyone like of my like immediate friends that like wasn't there with me that I switched until like Thursday to when like they couldn't switch my mind off of it because they were all like, "No, you shouldn't do that. You've been playing this deck for so long." And I'm like glad I just like kept through it, and like Hani's just a insane coach and like getting me to learn that deck so quickly.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
I think
it's a tough feeling committing a lot of hours into one deck and then starting to get this the realization that maybe you should be playing something else. But it's nice to see that you had the ability to pick it up so like shortly before the tournament and still basically learn it all the way and take it all the way.
yeah, I mean it's a lot of last minute cramming. And how did you feel like during the event on the like the mechanics of the deck? Like did it like not the deck list, but like your personal play? Like how did it feel throughout the tournament? Were you improving? Were you still slipping up? Or
So, like I mentioned, I misplayed versus Yuto. I like to look back at all my losses and see which games were winnable, which ones were, if I could have done anything differently prior, just to like, even if it didn't matter in the short term, it'll matter in the long run. Like figuring out how to optimize even by like one step will just help me win a like later game. And that's something that happened in testing where I realized I wasn't using Nightmare Throne to like the best of its ability. So it's something I did really like cautiously through the tournament. I only used it when I needed it to because it allows you to insulate through hand traps like Nibiru, which I think are really important. Because not having to use your Phantom on a card like Nibiru or being able to put your Phantom on the field extremely late because you want to force your opponent to discard cards out of their hand early and then put up the Phantom as like the insulation for the last hand trap, I think was really important. And that's something I started realizing towards the end of testing. So I didn't have a lot of learning to do during the tournament, but I did have like two key like mistakes during the tournament. And I wouldn't say they're like full misplays because it's not that I did everything wrong. It's just I got all the way till the end and then made the mistake at the end. So like I knew the right line. I just like at the end made the wrong move. And that's something that's just like on me, and like I'm very happy I was able to acknowledge it immediately. Like one of the times I was playing versus Yuto, I made the mistake of linking into a Solar Rage with my Impermed Phantom and a Yama while I had Nightmare Throne on the field. And what I should have done is just Shavara popped the Phantom and then triggered Nightmare Throne to special summon Spirit out my deck. But since I went to make the Solar Rage first, because for some reason I wanted an add back to my hand, and then Yama special summoned something out from my graveyard, like I completely tunnel vision. I knew that was my line. I knew it played around Nib. I made the Solar Rage, and he just nibbed me on the Shavara effect, and I lost instantly. And that was like after I had gotten Phantasma, Imper Mash. So it's like if I resolve that play around the Nib, he's down to like 2 cards. I have a Phantom still. I get to end on a Solar Rage. Like the game would have ended. So like something like that small, I think wouldn't have happened if I had played the deck like longer. But it's something that I'm glad I'm able to realize quickly, and hopefully, the more I play the deck, the better I'll get at doing things like that.
how do you like the format? Like, I'm gonna be honest, I didn't find TCG super exciting. There was a lot of lacrima burn. There was just a lot of just here is X hand traps. Okay, into starter extender. How did you feel about like the actual gameplay on like a design level?
So I think the Worlds format, given everyone plays perfectly, is probably god awful, and everyone builds their deck perfectly. Where it's really like you go first. All right, what hand did you open? What hand did I open? All right, I'm gonna build my board accordingly, and like you hand trap me, sure, you just lost 2 cards. But we live in an imperfect world where everyone's going to make mistakes. So I think that allows for the gameplay to open up more and be a little more forgiving at times. And depending on where the perfect play stops happening, I think it allows the game to open up even more. Like I could say for sure during Swiss, there was times where my opponents allowed me to crack into their board a little too much before they started interacting with me, whether it be in fear of combination hand traps, whether it be.
Oh, you've suddenly gone muted.
I was worried that was on my end again.
Technical difficulties. One moment, chat. All right, just while.
Hello.
Oh, there you are.
Yep.
You're back.
We're back.
Okay. So
It cut off basically when you were saying that some of your opponents were letting you cook a little bit too much.
yeah, so like they let me get to a point where I have too many cards where the Yubel deck starts steamrolling. Like if you stop them early, I think it's the best. But if like they allowed my Beckoning Beast search to go, and then they allowed me to make a Yama and search Shabara, and now I put a Squirmer in the graveyard, and then like now I go activate Nightmare Throne. It's like I have 2 to 3 graveyard resources. Now my Nightmare Throne is gonna force a card because I get a Yubel onto the field, which if I'm going second can now make an Anguish with my Yama. If you destroy my Anguish, gives me a card back to my hand and brings back the Anguish, which makes another link monster. So like I'm able to force a lot of cards. I haven't even summoned Phantom of Yubel yet. I haven't even done like my Fiendsmith cards yet. So they allow you to open up the game more than they should have. And I think that's something that I personally enjoy taking advantage of. And that's where I get the most enjoyment out of playing Yu-Gi-Oh! But I think a lot of those elements are lost the later a format goes. So since Worlds is a one tournament format, I think it'll be fine for that tournament. I don't think it's a great format. I don't think it was terrible. But if this format would like to be kept playing, I think it would be like completely unenjoyable. Looking forward to the like TCG format. I think things will probably be a little different for a little bit up until Rage of the Abyss. And then we'll go back to, negate, activate wanted, search Snake Eye Ass,
Yeah, I was
and
gonna
then
ask
see
you
what
what
things.
you thought about the situation on Yubel in the current TCG format. Like I felt like with having decided for it to be the best deck for the Worlds format, I feel like it'd be even more obvious that it's just the best deck in the TCG for you. But I was gonna.
I think it's the best
your
deck up until the new cards come out,
Yeah.
at least
Okay.
for sure. I think the deck has a really big problem with the new Molcharmi Furuguros. I think that's the name of it.
Yeah.
Yikes.
The Yubel deck kind of has like a very interesting time playing around that card, especially the summoning from deck, summoning from extra deck. So like you have to give them at least 1 to 2 draws to make a Phantom minimum. So like it gets really weird at times. So I think the format's definitely going to change a lot there, and I'm kind of hoping the format like slows down a little bit. Maybe not to the way OCG's is, where they have like 9 pseudo copies of Max C and like 6 stops in their deck. So, but just like into a way so decks are making like half boards, and I kind of really enjoy Yubel as a deck that makes half boards, and it feels very similar to like Dragon Link, where you kind of like play with the cards you're given. You make your Striker Dragon or your Yama, get your +1. You go for like, oh, your other +1 through like Nightmare Throne. All right, now I'm gonna make my Moon, which is like another Link 2. All right, gonna go for like Solar Rage, which is my like seal essentially. Set the trap card, have Phantom. Go ahead, and it's like if you stop me halfway through the turn, you just like lost cards. And I enjoy playing the U-Ball deck like that instead of it being like, all right, I'm gonna put Desiree, Verugis, like all these negates on the field. I think you're playing very hard into like multiple combinations of board breakers and hand traps. And I think that version will probably be very successful post the Asamina cards, but Snake Eye will probably be tier 0 again.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to Fuvarol specifically. I'm curious how that's gonna change things. It's weird because it's like I think the direction is like here's some like really powerful like cards that stop decks rather than just inherently reducing the power of decks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
Because that's like the logic with Max C being legal in OCG, right? It's like, well, yeah, you can have all of these crazy broken cards that a lot of TCG don't have. Like they had like Block Dragon, Union Carrier, Hulk, all of those kind of cards. They had those, I think, generally longer than we did, and the logic is like, well, Max C keeps it in check, right? But
They just didn't get the memo, right? They just didn't notice that all of those combo decks were still played and still dominated, right? Like. So the way they interpreted it was like, well, what if they just need more maxis?
like that's the problem. They just
haven't
need
had
more
enough.
of them.
But like I think that just adds to the issue of like, well, is the problem the cards that stop it or the decks that are doing it? And I feel like it's kind of like a 50-50 where like because the decks are so strong, cards like that need to be printed. But because cards like that are printed, decks need to become even stronger to beat them. So it's like which one kind of like comes first, and how do you address the issue? And I think this
Yeah.
is something like a lot of like the better players like strive for. And I think like interaction instead of like negates is like a very big like turning point that I think Konami has started to like get to, where I think the game becomes a little more fair. Like a deck can do a lot as long as you can interact with it, but the second you start putting like negate and destroy on every card, it becomes really hard to like play into a board.
I feel like the TCG has been taking some steps this year that are much appreciated. You know, like Borreload Savage, Baron, now Appaloosa, are all things that kind of like go against that. Like, you know, decks can probably still do a lot of things, but they can't do those things anymore, which have been the optimal thing to do in almost any Yu-Gi-Oh deck and when those cards were legal, right? So that is gonna, at some point, if we continue down this road of hitting some of those like super limiting end board pieces, then people are going to be forced to play more engine versus engine.
Did you get your prize card yet?
No, I have not. But I was contacted about how they want my name spelled on it, so hopefully it's getting engraved soon, and I will get a hold
Wait,
of
so
it.
the trophy gets
even
your name. Does
sooner.
the card have your name?
So the acrylic casing at the bottom of the card is getting my name engraved on it as well.
Right. That's sick.
Yeah.
Are you selling it?
I'm looking to move the card. Yes.
How much do you think it's worth?
So that's the thing. I'm not sure how much I should be talking about that specifically on the podcast, just
That's
because
fair. That's completely reasonable.
it's a serious number, but it definitely is something that has unique value. As a lot of people know, I think there's only 5 copies available as right now, like the 3 Master
Yeah.
Duelists, my copy, and then the 1 for Speed Duels. So it's a very unique card. It looks like Blue Eyes, so I think that'll give it like a higher price tag. It's a very unsure thing, as Pauly still has his that he won last year. So there really isn't like a known price tag for it. At least for that one, for TCG aspects, I guess, because some people like prefer to get the card that like was one for TCG over Master Duel and stuff like that. So just it'll be interesting considering like post pandemic, we've all seen like cards have extremely absorbent amounts of value, but it also you need to find someone that is willing to pay that. So that could be a very artificial value. We'll see. I'm really happy with the way the card looks and everything else we got. Like I'm pretty sure I'm gonna be framing the playmats and the jersey. So that'll be really exciting once it's up.
Yeah, that's it's some good stuff that you get to keep forever, especially the frame jersey. I think that's something that a lot of players do that looks super, super sick. The Rush Duel card is like a 1 of 1. I've heard that
That's crazy, by the way. Yeah.
That one looks beautiful. I wish we could have gotten something similar. Like it doesn't have to be the same, just anywhere near that would have been awesome.
Yeah. For context,
And I'm not sure, but I think I think there's a chance this is the first time there's ever been a one of one prize card.
Yeah, the crazy thing is I think he can just put like any tag he wants on that, and that's like
just say a number. What are they gonna do? Find someone else?
I think easily 6 digits. I heard that the previous like year's Duel Links card or something, or like some year's Duel Links card went for 6 digits, which is
those have never been exclusive, right? Because like the reason I said it's the first time it's a 1 of 1 is because
it's Rush
like,
Duel
ever
art.
since 2012 there's been a Dragon Duel World Championship.
Mm.
So there was always multiple copies, and I'm pretty sure even before 2012, I think 2011 was the last time they still had the Nintendo DS World Championships that also got the same prize card.
DS?
So like the last time
Oh.
we've had a 1 of 1 prize card must have been like if any of them exist, it must have been like 2005 or something.
Yeah, I heard there was like wasn't it like the Steel BLS or something was like one of the first like exclusive 1 of 1 prize cards?
I have no idea if maybe there was
exists.
even multiple ways to get a prize card back then. Like I don't know when the first Nintendo DS Worlds happened, for example.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, I hope it works out for you because I mean, like the coolest thing about this, I suppose, is like you get to the peak of the game, you get to the World Championship, and hey, listen, you know, you get to really advance yourself forward in life, with such a big number. Right? That's a down payment on a house or something potentially. So, it's a positive thing at least to get something really valuable at the World Championship.
It's something that I think a lot of people kind of like don't realize how like profiting it is for the players. It was kind of like disheartening to see a lot of the like Yu-Gi-Oh fans talking down on like Konami and saying, "Oh, we're all just getting switches and stuff for like showing up to like Worlds." And I know Josh has touched up on this, but like they really take care of you, even though it's not like the best of the best. And like, yeah, you wish they could just be giving you millions of dollars for free, but like you're definitely getting taken care of when like you show up to the event.
I feel like
At least for Worlds.
Worlds is definitely the one event that I feel like you just can't really complain about it because like
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
really like all of the players. I feel like you feel really special even in the years you don't do too well and all that kind of stuff. But
I mean, yeah, you get like
yeah,
a ton of like really cool stuff even just for showing up to Worlds, which is pretty sick.
Yeah.
It's a big accolade, you know, so naturally. All right. Josh, do you want to ask any questions or go over any other topics or
I think
for
I've asked
TCG
the questions
specifically?
I had written down all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a go, I suppose.
Did you want to answer a Patreon question together?
Yeah,
Do we
sure,
have
we
one
can-
specifically on this topic?
Not specifically on this topic.
Okay. Because I actually have not tracked any Patreon questions for this episode.
There was one that you said we were gonna do when we're back, and we haven't done it yet. I don't think.
Did I? Okay, which one? I say a lot of things, Josh.
Okay. I'll just read it.
Go
What do
on.
you think about the pace at which Konami is releasing new archetypes? New archetypes are always what get me the most hyped when it comes to new sets, but I'm also frequently disappointed when the archetype comes out and feels unfinished. And for many archetypes, it feels like they come and go without getting their moment in the sun. I wonder if reducing the number of new archetypes they're making would allow for better focus on both new and old ones. At the same time, the large variety of archetypes, each with their own aesthetic and gameplay style, is my favorite thing about Yu-Gi-Oh!
Okay, we're cooking with this one. Remember, $1 Patreon per month is all you need to take. Is all you need to pay to get into the exclusive Patreon Discord and also submit a Patreon in the week, which I definitely didn't almost forget this week. Yeah, we're talking about archetypes and how there's just
Okay,
a
so
lot.
instant, without much thought. First response: How is there too many or too few archetypes, or is it just right?
Yeah, what do you think, Ruben?
I think there's too many. Just like really quickly, like there's so many, like they were saying, archetypes that a lot of them don't get their moment in the spotlight. Where like you
Mhm.
can read a card from a random archetype and be like, this card is crazy. Like in the grand scheme of things, this card has an insane effect, but the archetype in and of itself sucks.
Yeah.
So why not like reduce the amount of archetypes you make so that way you can apply a card, maybe not the exact same busted effect, but a level of it to an archetype that will see the light, and then that way the card can be used.
Mhm.
I think like Melodious is a perfect example of this, right? Like that deck was like kind of maybe looking to be top tier, and then it just, you know, instantly kind of got power crept after Beansmith came out, like the very next set. So
Yeah. Maybe it's not about like how often or how many archetypes they make, but rather just like the speed at which they release them, which I guess is kind of the same thing. Like if you release your stuff slower, then you will also end up releasing less new archetypes. But like, you know, there wasn't really enough time for the new Melodious support to really shine because there's just been a next set. Because what is the pace for main sets at the moment for us? I couldn't even tell you off the top of my head. Is it
I
3
think
months?
it's 3 months,
4 months.
roughly every 3 months.
3 months.
yeah, I think product
Yeah, I mean,
cadence
that's
is
rough.
definitely a huge problem, right? Well, problem or a good thing depending on how you look at it. But you know, with product cadence being so quick, it's like here's a powerful main set deck. Here's some crazy deck build pack that has like an insane deck. Here's another core set. Here's what that gets support for the previous archetype, and then here's like a structure deck that maybe is like new or broken, right? Like it's just there's just constantly so much, and we don't really get to see the format develop too much, at least in Europe anyway, because the YCSs are a little bit more sporadic.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
Yeah, and that's also another issue. Sometimes there's decks or formats that I wish would get more. I would get to play more big events in, right? But we simply don't, right? And sometimes there's decks that you can play at like 2 consecutive YCSs and a national or something, and then something like I don't know, Melodious was a deck that we had for Nats, and that was basically it, right? Like we had Melodious for nationals, and even there it wasn't the best deck, but it was playable. But then Fiendsmith released, and so Melodious was gone after one major event for us.
yeah.
It's
perfect
kind of
example.
like Voiceless Voice, like a high rarity deck coming out of the same set where like Snake Eye got popular, and then like it started off signing like decently well, and then look at it, like the deck hasn't been hit at all. Just like Snake Eye gets more support, and Voiceless gets one card of support, if that.
Yeah.
A
And it
one
just
of,
can't even.
yeah.
It was already struggling to keep up. So like, how is it able to do that? And like Farfa mentioned, the deck building sets. I feel like those also just like increase like the like floor for decks to have in order to be like a competent playable deck, because a lot of times they're releasing very strong cards in those deck building sets in order to push them. So like the floor for a competent Yu-Gi-Oh deck, I think, is a lot higher than it like would be releasing less archetypes throughout the year.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't have an issue so much with certain archetypes not being competitively viable. I think there is more to an archetype that than just its competitive power. Like one example that I like from recent sets is the Mimigul archetype, for example, which I'm not expecting to be competitively viable in any shape or form unless they give it an insane second wave of support. But it's a deck that I look at and I'm like, yeah, this looks really fun, and like it's probably okay and good enough to bring to like locals and something. But it's very unique, right? Whereas like other archetypes just feel like they're trying to be a meta deck, but they're just not.
It's really weird though, isn't it? Because there's no measurement for Yu-Gi-Oh decks other than advanced constructed modern format power, I think, right? And when you say like
Well,
locals,
for us, that's true, right? But for them, it's also, I guess, like they can see success in other ways. Like they can kind of gauge how popular a deck is by like how a certain set is doing, or maybe they'll also go out on the internet and see how much a deck is talked about, and interpret this as like a sort of like what's it called, a sort of like success, right? Like I'm sure you can find more videos on Mimigul already than you will find on Tistina at release, probably. It's just a guess, but that's how it felt like. That's how I felt like that that archetype resonated with the community. I feel like there was more hype around it than Tistina, even though both of them had almost no meta impact, right?
yeah, two TCG. Tistina was TCG, right?
Yeah,
Exclusive.
it's also a Tistina.
So
Yeah,
two TCG exclusive decks. I think it's just like, is it like the theme maybe? Because like Tistina, I look at it, I don't even know what's going on here.
It is. I couldn't even tell you what it is, but like something about Tistina just like
Maybe
yeah, it just
bland
doesn't.
or.
It felt like it didn't have a game plan. Like I don't know if you've read all the cards, and I can't remember them all off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like they were cohesive. Or like you can read the Mimigul cards and be like, okay, this is like one X card away from being decent.
Yeah.
Like you can identify what the deck is missing. Or like I feel like Testina is a deck that like it's just missing everything. Like it doesn't have a core like game plan. Like it doesn't have what like an idea of how it wants to win the game. Like it
It's
has
like-
cards like that fall for the archetype, but that's it.
It's like make one card to make Tistina good, dude. I don't know what I want to make.
The WinCon is like
I
a
don't
weird
need-
Book of Eclipse, basically, and that's all you're getting.
Yeah.
All right, this has been a good one. Thank you so much for joining us, Ruben. It's been a real pleasure, and thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to us about your World Championship. Recall, first place, ladies and gentlemen, the reigning best duelist in the planet. It's Ruben on TCG's victory from the USA. Unbelievable. You just get a flex, and you just say I am reigning world champion. You just get to say that for another 365 days. Like that's a very cool accolade. You get it forever as well. You are a world champion. Like that's that's never taken away from you. Am I right, Josh?
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Maybe I take a page out of Josh's book and just put "World Champ does" on everything I do and see.
Oh yeah, do that.
Yeah.
Easy clap.
Put it on your Instagram
Yeah,
stories.
I saw Jesse was already doing it.
Oh yeah,
so,
Jesse's already on the grind.
He's
Yeah,
milking
yeah.
it. Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe that's the goo.
You don't do
But,
any content, right?
Yeah, thank you again for no, not as of now. I don't know. It's something I've thought of.
Yeah.
I have a very busy schedule, so I'd love to, but we'll see. We'll see. I don't want to say anything more about that.
Put it on
We'll see.
Instagram and say, world champ eats cookie, world champ drinks coffee,
Yeah.
All right. Any final statements? Anything you want to send off before we head off?
Yeah. So two things. Anyone can do anything, and if it's not for me, Bell, it's for you, Bell.
Let's go.
Thank you again. Big fan of the podcast. Hopefully we get to talk again soon, guys.
It is our honor. So thank you for being here.
Yes.
Thanks everyone for tuning in and listening. Remember, subscribe if you haven't already on the various platforms that you are listening to this on: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and maybe Google as well. I think, I'm not sure, but yeah, that's the main channels. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, shout outs to my co-host Josh for being here, and of course Ruben for being the reigning world champion. Tune in next week where we will be talking about, I don't know, maybe we'll do a more Mastodon-centric one next week. We'll figure it out. Let us know in the Discord by subscribing to Patreon for just a singular $1. Peace out and see you next week.
Bye.